The citadel of Caelis loomed like a sentinel over the sprawling metropolis below, its towering spires piercing the neon-streaked sky. A web of light and shadow stretched across the city, its pulse in time with the restless hum of technology and whispered ambitions. Within those ancient walls, power thrummed, a delicate balance now unraveling with the slow but inevitable decline of King Varek. Riley Arden stood silently by the arched window of the royal chamber, her gaze fixed on the horizon, where twin suns dipped below the jagged silhouette of the cityscape. The air was cool, tinged with the faint scent of ionized metal and distant rain. Her reflection merged with the stars beyond, pale skin illuminated by the cold glow, eyes sharp and calculating. She was the king's advisor, his shadow in the court's labyrinth, the mind behind his faltering reign. Tonight the court was restless. Courtiers moved like ghosts through the grand hallways, their voices hushed but urgent. The king's health, once a secret shielded by whispers and subterfuge, was now an open wound bleeding rumors and fear. Riley felt the weight of inevitability settling around her shoulders like a cloak. The fading crown meant more than just a dying monarch. It meant a kingdom exposed, a throne without a master, and a storm of ambition poised to tear everything apart. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft creak of the door. Varen, the captain of the palace guard, entered with the careful steps of a man who bore bad news. His expression was grim, the lines on his face deepening beneath eyes that rarely betrayed emotion. "The king's condition worsened this evening," Varen reported quietly. "The healers say his strength is failing. They fear he may not see the dawn." Riley's eyes narrowed. She had expected as much. "Then the time to act is now," she said, voice steady but cold. "The court will fracture. The nobles will circle like vultures." Varen nodded. "Lord Caelis has already begun consolidating power. He commands loyalty among several key factions." A flicker of something unspoken passed between them. Fear, perhaps, or the heavy burden of knowing the palace was a powder keg. Riley turned away from the window, the glint of resolve hardening in her gaze. She had long prepared for this moment. Every secret she'd uncovered, every alliance she'd forged in shadow, it all led here. Survival was no longer enough. She must seize control before the kingdom tore itself apart. As she moved through the hallways, the flicker of a hollow map activated under her fingertips, revealing the sprawling city below and the intricate web of alliances and rivalries that governed it. She traced a path through the maze of power, her mind racing. Suddenly, a whisper of movement caught her attention. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward. Lady Vera, the enigmatic noblewoman whose loyalty was as veiled as the night. "Riley," she purred, voice silky but edged with steel, "the game is beginning. Are you ready to play for everything?" Riley met her gaze, unflinching. "I was born ready." Behind them, the citadel's great clock tolled midnight, a herald of an era's end, and the birth of a ruthless new game. The fading crown cast long shadows, and Riley Arden was determined to be the last light standing. The palace of Caelis never truly slept. Even in the dead hours when most minds sought rest, the corridors remained alive with secrets, conspiracies, and silent footsteps threading through shadows. Tonight, the very air was thick with whispered plots and stolen glances, an orchestra of subtlety that Riley Arden had learned to conduct with ruthless precision. She moved through the labyrinthine halls, cloaked in a midnight blue cloak, the fabric whispering against the marble floor. Her pale face was set, eyes gleaming with cold calculation, beneath a veil of long, dark lashes. Every corner, every echo carried a message, if one only listened. The inner sanctum of the palace was a nexus, where whispered words wielded more power than swords, and Riley was master of this unseen realm. Her informants, a network of courtiers, spies, and servants, fed her information like lifeblood. Tonight, the tendrils of unrest were sharper, the currents more volatile. In the gallery overlooking the central court, she paused. Below, masked nobles and dignitaries murmured over gleaming glasses of dark crimson wine, an unspoken ritual masking 1,000 silent negotiations. Riley's eyes scanned the crowd, seeking the familiar faces of allies and enemies alike. Flicker of movement drew her attention to a secluded alcove. There, a young scribe passed a sealed hollow message to a cloaked figure. Riley's pulse quickened. The message bore the royal seal, unauthorized communication, dangerous. Slipping down a narrow staircase, she intercepted the cloaked figure in a shadowed corridor. The stranger's breath hitched, but Riley's voice was a cold blade. "Who sent this?" The figure hesitated, then lowered the hood, revealing the sharp features of a palace attendant. "My lady, I only deliver messages. I do not know their contents." Riley's lips curved into a faint, merciless smile. Lies are easy to tell, and fatal here. Before the attendant could protest, a silent alarm triggered, a subtle pulse in Riley's earpiece. Someone was watching, someone close. With a swift gesture, Riley slipped the sealed hollow into her palm and disappeared into the shadows, heart racing with the thrill of the hunt. The palace was a chessboard, and every piece moved with deadly intent. Back in her chambers, Riley activated the message. The hologram flickered to life, revealing a cryptic warning. "The prince's allies grow restless. A traitor walks among your closest." The sender was anonymous. Her mind reeled. Lord Caelis was already making his move. Now there was a traitor within her circle? The stakes had doubled. A sharp knock pulled her from thought. Varen entered, tension etched into every line of his face. They speak openly now, in the kitchens and the servants' quarters. The court fractures faster than we can mend. His voice was grave. Riley nodded slowly. Then we must become the fracture. If they want war, we will give them a war they won't forget. She moved to the window again, gazing out at the glittering city, a kingdom poised on the edge of ruin. Her resolve hardened. In a world where whispers killed, Riley Arden would be the loudest voice. And in the halls of Caelis, shadows held many secrets, but none darker than her own. The grand hall of Caelis was a cathedral of power, soaring ceilings adorned with ancient murals, shimmering with bioluminescent veins that pulsed faintly like the heartbeat of the planet itself. Tonight, it was a battlefield, every whispered word a blade, every glance a threat. Lord Caelis, crown prince and son of the ailing King Varric, stood at the head of the room. His presence was magnetic, his dark eyes gleaming with ambition sharpened to a razor's edge. His voice echoed through the chamber, smooth and commanding. "Loyal subjects," he began, "our king's time wanes. The future of Caelis demands clarity, strength, and decisive action. We cannot afford weakness." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some in agreement, others in cautious dissent. Caelis's allies, a well-organized faction of nobles and military commanders, leaned forward, their expressions hungry for change. From the shadowed balcony, Riley watched, her fingers resting lightly on the cold stone railing. The prince's gambit was bold, a direct challenge not only to her king, but to the fragile balance she'd worked tirelessly to maintain. Caelis's next words cut through the room like a blade. "I propose a council to govern during my father's final days, a council that will prepare Caelis for the challenges ahead, led by those with vision, not sentiment. A calculated move, designed to strip power from the current regime and place it squarely in his grasp." Riley's mind raced. If the council formed, her influence would be diminished, her carefully crafted network disrupted. She could not allow that. Her eyes met those of Lady Vera across the hall. A flicker of silent communication passed between them. Vera's smile was inscrutable, her loyalty a riddle wrapped in shadows. As the hall erupted into debate, Riley descended the grand staircase, every step measured and deliberate. Approaching the prince, she bowed lightly, lips curling in a veneer of polite respect. "Your Highness," she said, voice low and smooth, "the kingdom stands at a precipice. Your proposal is intriguing yet perilous. Hastening the king's transition may invite chaos." Melis's gaze held hers, sharp and unyielding. "Chaos is preferable to stagnation, Advisor Arden. The kingdom needs a strong hand. Will you stand with me or stand in my way?" The question hung heavy in the air. Riley's mind worked rapidly, weighing the cost of open opposition against the danger of alliance. To stand with Melis meant compromising her own vision. To oppose him risked igniting a feud that could consume them both. "I stand with Caelis," she replied, carefully neutral. Melis's eyes gleamed with something unreadable: respect, challenge, or calculation. As she withdrew, Riley's thoughts turned inward. The game had shifted. The prince had made his move, forcing her hand. The next play would decide not only the fate of the throne, but the survival of everyone she sought to protect. Outside the palace, the twin moons of Caelis cast pale light over the city, unaware of the battles waged within. But Riley knew no light could pierce the shadows of ambition, and in those shadows she was queen. The palace was a living organism, pulsing with secrets beneath its gleaming surfaces. Every corridor hid whispers, every smile masked agendas, but no presence was as enigmatic or as dangerous as Lady Vera. Riley felt her before she saw. Her, the subtle shift in air, the faintest trace of jasmine, and something colder, more metallic. Lady Vera appeared like a ghost slipping through the halls, her movements fluid and precise, her pale face framed by a cascade of silver hair that shimmered even in the dimmest light. Eyes the color of storm clouds flicked over Riley with a calculating coolness. They met in the private alcove of the palace gardens, where bioluminescent flora cast eerie glows over sculpted marble. Here power was exchanged, not with swords, but with words dipped in poison. "You move well among shadows, Riley," Vera said softly, voice of velvet thread woven with steel, "but shadows can be deceiving." Riley's gaze remained steady, measuring. "And you wear your deceptions like a second skin. To what do I owe this unexpected visit?" Vera smiled, a slow curve that did not reach her eyes. "Information, opportunities, the kingdom teeters, and I offer a way to steady the throne." "Or to tip it," Riley countered, never letting her guard fall. Vera's laughter was low, almost musical. "You and I both know the crown will fall to whoever grasps it first. I simply provide the hands." She stepped closer, the scent of danger trailing her like a shadow. "There is a traitor in your circle, Riley, one who walks cloaked in trust, but whose blade strikes deepest." Riley's pulse quickened, but her voice was calm. "And you know this how?" Vera's eyes gleamed with a secret amusement. "Because I watch. I listen. And I have my own reasons to see Caelis survive, though perhaps not as you envision." Riley's mind raced. An ally? An enemy? In a court rife with duplicity, the lines blurred. Could she afford to trust Lady Vera's warning, or was this yet another thread in a web designed to ensnare her? Before she could answer, a sudden noise shattered the tense calm. A distant crash echoed through the garden, followed by hurried footsteps. Vera's expression flickered, a rare crack in her composed facade. "This game is moving faster than either of us expected." Without another word, she vanished into the shadows, leaving Riley alone amidst the glowing flowers, the weight of doubt heavier than ever. Riley's fingers curled into a fist. The palace was no longer just a battlefield of crowns and crownsmen. It was a labyrinth of deception, where every face hid a dagger. And in this deadly dance, Riley knew one truth. To survive, she would have to become the most dangerous shadow of all. The grand chamber where Riley met with Lord Caelan was heavy with history. Walls etched with battle scenes and treaties long forgotten, a silent testament to past betrayals and fleeting loyalties. Tonight, It became the unlikely stage for a fragile alliance. Caelis, once a rival noble known for his ruthlessness and ambition, regarded Riley with a cautious gaze. His features were sharp, framed by dark hair streaked with silver, and his eyes held the cold clarity of a man who had survived too many wars. Riley stepped into the room, her every movement calculated, her pale face unreadable beneath the soft glow of hovering lanterns. Behind the veneer of civility, both knew this meeting was a gamble, one that could tip the scales in the kingdom's fragile balance. "Lord Caelis," Riley began, voice steady yet edged with warning, "we both understand that the kingdom's fate hangs by a thread. Alone, we are vulnerable. Together, we may hold that thread for a time." Caelis's lips twitched into a semblance of a smile. "A delicate thread, Advisor Arden, one that can snap with the slightest strain," she nodded. "Precisely why we must be cautious. Lord Caelis tightens his grip, and the shadows grow darker. The traitor moves within, and the king's health fails." Caelis's gaze flickered, his expression hardening. "I have no love for Caelis, nor for the current order, but I have my own ambitions. What guarantee do I have that your loyalty will not falter when the winds shift?" Riley's eyes glinted with resolve. "Because if Caelis falls, so do we all, and because I offer you knowledge, the name of the traitor who would see us destroyed." Caelis's interest sharpened, his posture straightening. "Speak!" She produced a small hollow communicator, its surface shimmering with encoded data. "This evidence points to Lord Renar, a man who smiles in council but plots in darkness." A shadow passed over Caelis's face. "Renar? He is cunning, but dangerous to accuse without proof." "I understand the risk," Riley said quietly, "but waiting will only tighten his noose around us. We must act." The room thickened with unspoken tension. The alliance neither fully trusted nor completely despised, yet necessity welded them together, a temporary shield against the encroaching storm. Caelis finally extended a hand, rough and weathered. "Very well, for Caelis and for our survival." Riley accepted the grasp, feeling the weight of their pact settle, like cold stone between them. Outside the palace hummed with hidden dangers, alliances forged in whispers, and treacheries waiting to unravel. In the treacherous dance of power, even the most fragile threads could weave a path to salvation or lead to ruin, and Riley Arden was determined to choose which. The candlelight flickered, casting dancing shadows against the cold stone walls of Riley's private chamber. The air was heavy with tension, mingling with the faint scent of spiced incense, a fragile attempt to mask the underlying unease that had taken root within the palace. The night was deep, but sleep eluded her. Her mind was a battlefield where trust and betrayal clashed with relentless fury. Seated behind a polished obsidian desk, Riley sifted through stacks of encrypted reports and intercepted communications. Each piece of information was a thread in a vast tapestry of deceit, one she desperately sought to unravel before it strangled her fragile alliance. A soft chime broke the silence, signaling the arrival of a visitor. Without turning, Riley spoke, her voice steady but edged with impatience. "Enter!" The door slid open silently, and Varen stepped inside, his usually stoic expression marred by something more urgent. His armored boots made no sound on the marble floor, yet his presence filled the room like a storm about to break. "Advisor," Varen began, "there has been movement. Lord Renar's network is more extensive than we feared. He has eyes in every corner, guards, servants, even within the council chambers." Riley's eyes narrowed. "He knows we are watching?" Varen nodded grimly. "And he's prepared to act. Tonight he summons a secret meeting. If we can intercept, we might catch him red-handed." Riley's heart quickened. This was the moment they'd been waiting for, the chance to expose the traitor and cripple his influence. "Gather your men," she ordered, rising with purposeful grace. "But this must be silent. No alarms, no mistakes." As Varen departed, Riley's thoughts raced. The palace that once seemed a fortress was now a maze of shadows where danger lurked in every corridor and allegiance shifted like quicksilver. She had trusted too easily before. This time, she would watch every step. Slipping into a concealed passage behind her chamber, Riley moved with practiced stealth through the labyrinthine tunnels that wound beneath the citadel. The walls seemed to close in, the echoes of distant footsteps, a haunting reminder of the stakes. Reaching a concealed door, she paused, then slipped inside a dimly lit chamber. Figures gathered in hushed conversation, Lord Renar among them, his sharp features illuminated by flickering holoscreens. His voice was low, commanding, as he plotted with those who sought to unravel the throne. Riley's breath caught. This was the web of treachery she had feared, the heart of the poison spreading through Caelis. Drawing a concealed communicator, she signaled Varen. Within moments, shadows moved like ghosts through the tunnels, closing in on the conspirators. But just as the net tightened, a sudden alarm shattered the silence, a warning that the trap had been sprung too soon. Chaos erupted. Lords and spies scattered, blades flashed in the dim light, and Riley found herself caught between duty and survival. In the deadly ballet of shadows and steel, trust was a luxury none could afford. And in the heart of the storm, Riley Arden stood alone, the fragile hope of a kingdom resting on her resolve. The aftermath of the failed ambush hung over the palace like a suffocating fog. In the days since the explosion of chaos beneath Caelis's gilded ceilings, trust had shattered into shards, too sharp to handle without bleeding. The very stones of the citadel seemed to echo with the ghosts of betrayal, and every smile was tinged with suspicion. Riley stood on the balcony of her chambers, staring out over the sprawling city, a cascade of neon veins pulsing beneath the twin moons. The air was thick with unease. The alliance with Lord Caelan, once a fragile beacon of hope, now strained beneath the weight of failure and suspicion. Each noble faction whispered behind closed doors, eyes turning from one another like wary predators. Her pale face was etched with exhaustion, the once steely glint in her eyes now shadowed by doubt. The palace was no longer a seat of order, but a powder keg poised to ignite. Footsteps approached swiftly from behind. Varen appeared, his armor gleaming faintly in the moonlight, his expression grim. "We've lost ground, Riley," he said, quietly. "Renar slipped through our fingers, and with him the secrets he carries. The council fractures further, nobles question your loyalty, and some openly defy you." Riley's jaw clenched. "Then we have less time than I thought. If the court unravels, chaos will consume us all." Varen hesitated. "There's more. Caelis is moving quickly. His faction demands the king's immediate abdication. The throne's vacancy is a siren's call for every ambitious lord." The weight of it pressed down like a physical force. The fading crown was no longer just a metaphor. It was a danger that could topple the kingdom into ruin. Riley turned back toward the interior of the palace, her mind racing. The fractures ran deep, not only in the court, but within herself. Could she navigate the deadly maze of alliances without becoming a casualty? Could she survive the storm she had helped to awaken? A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. A messenger arrived, breathless and pale, clutching a sealed hollow letter. "From the southern sector," the messenger gasped. "Urgent news, my lady." Riley broke the seal. The message was brief but incendiary. "A rebellion stirs beyond the city. If Caelis falls, it will fall from within." Her heart pounded. The court's fractures were mirrored by unrest in the streets, a spark that could ignite a wildfire. Riley's gaze hardened. The game had shifted again. No longer could she rely solely on palace intrigue. The fate of Caelis now depended on balancing the treacherous tides of power with the volatile pulse of the people. Turning to Varen, she said with fierce determination, "Prepare my council. We must act decisively. The fracture deepens, and, if we do not mend it, it will tear us apart. As the twin moons cast their cold light over the city, Riley Arden knew one truth above all. In the court of shadows, survival demanded more than cunning. It demanded sacrifice. And the price was rising. The palace council chamber was suffused with an uneasy tension, the air thick with whispered accusations and veiled threats. Heavy drapes of obsidian velvet hung from the walls, swallowing light and sound alike, turning the room into a sanctuary of secrets and suspicions. Here, the fate of Caelis would be decided or shattered. Riley entered the chamber with quiet authority, the murmur of assembled nobles and generals falling into a cautious silence. Each face was a mask, carefully crafted to conceal agendas that twisted like serpents beneath calm exteriors. The lines between friend and foe blurred into a tangled web. At the head of the table sat Lord Caelis, his sharp gaze fixed on Riley. The fragile alliance was brittle, and both knew their survival depended on careful maneuvering. Riley began, voice steady but laced with urgency. The fractures in the court are no longer whispers. The threat extends beyond these walls. Rebellion festers in the outer districts, and the prince's faction presses for control. We must unify or perish. Murmurs rippled around the chamber, some nodding in reluctant agreement, others exchanging wary glances. Power was a currency measured in loyalty, and loyalty was a commodity scarce as water in a desert. Lord Melis's envoy rose, a tall woman with steel-gray eyes and an icy demeanor. The prince offers stability. The king's condition is failing. Delay risks anarchy. Riley's eyes narrowed. Stability under a prince who commands through fear and division is no salvation. The envoy's lips pressed thin, but she made no reply. The chamber simmered with unspoken challenges. Caelis's voice broke the tension. This is not a matter of loyalty to a crown, but survival for all. Advisor Arden, we need your plan. Riley met their gazes one by one. First, we root out the traitors in our midst. Lord Renar's escape was a blow, but his network remains vulnerable. Second, we must quell the unrest among the people, not with brute force, but with action that restores hope. A younger noble shifted uncomfortably. And what of the prince? Will you oppose his claim? Riley's answer was a slow, measured breath. The throne belongs to the people, not to ambition. But if we are to prevent civil war, we must engage him with cunning, not confrontation. Varin stepped forward, his voice a steady anchor. We have loyalists ready to act, should the council give the word. But timing is crucial. The council debated late into the night, alliances forged and broken in the space between words. Riley watched, calculating every glance, every hesitation. In this web of loyalties, the smallest misstep could unravel them all. As the meeting adjourned, Caelis approached Riley quietly. You walk a razor's edge, Arden. Trust is your greatest weapon and your deadliest risk. She met his gaze, unflinching. Then I will wield it carefully, or fall. Outside, the city lay under a blanket of stars, but beneath the light, the web tightened. In the game of power and survival, every thread mattered, and Riley Arden was the weaver. The night cloaked Caelis in a velvet shadow, but the palace hummed with a different kind of darkness, one born not of absence of light, but of secrets buried beneath layers of whispered lies. The corridors were lined with silent watchers, eyes gleaming like stars in the gloom, each waiting for the moment to strike or surrender. Riley moved through the halls with practiced stealth, her footsteps muffled by the thick carpets embroidered with the sigils of fallen dynasties. The chill of the stone walls seeped into her bones, but the fire in her veins burned brighter. Tonight she was not the adviser seen by many, but the hunter tracking shadows. She arrived at a concealed chamber nestled deep within the oldest wing of the citadel, a place where even the bravest dared not tread. The door, etched with ancient runes, opened to reveal a room pulsing with silent energy. Hollow screens flickered with streams of data, and scattered documents bore marks of a long-forgotten code. Her eyes scanned the room. The signs were unmistakable. A covert council was at work, their plans unfolding beneath the facade of loyalty. Lord Renar's influence had seeped deeper than anyone had dared admit. Suddenly, a whisper of movement. Riley's hand went to the dagger at her hip, but she was not alone. From the shadows stepped Varen, his face grim but eyes sharp. "You shouldn't be here alone," he muttered. "We don't have the luxury of waiting," she replied. "Renar's network is orchestrating a silent coup. If we do not act, the palace will fall from within before the prince makes his move." Together, they sifted through intercepted messages and coded transmissions. Names appeared, trusted council members, palace guards, even a royal envoy. The conspiracy was a web, its threads tangled and extending into the heart of Caelis. A soft alert sounded on one holoscreen, a message encrypted with the highest clearance recently sent. Riley's fingers danced across the controls, decoding the content, plans to assassinate key advisors during the upcoming coronation ceremony. The realization struck like lightning. "The prince's gambit is more ruthless than we feared," Riley said, voice barely above a whisper. "This is war cloaked in silk." Varen's jaw tightened. "We must warn the king and prepare defenses, but trust will be harder to come by than ever." As they retreated from the hidden chamber, Riley felt the weight of the silent conspiracy pressing down. The palace was no longer just a seat of power. It was a battlefield where every alliance was fragile, every smile a mask hiding daggers. Outside, the twin moons of Caelis hung low, casting long shadows over the city, and in those shadows the game played on. Riley knew one thing for certain: the night was far from over. The day of the coronation dawned cold and gray. The twin sons of Caelis struggling to pierce the heavy clouds that hung low over the city. Despite the somber sky, the palace was alive with restless energy. Noble houses dressed in their finery, servants scurrying to prepare, and the murmurs of whispered plots weaving through the marble halls. Riley moved through the throng like a shadow cast by purpose, her pale face framed by dark locks tied tightly behind her head. Today, the fragile threads of loyalty would be tested. Today, the kingdom's fate would hang on a knife's edge. The grand hall was a cavernous cathedral of gleaming steel and crystalline panels that shimmered with ethereal light. Elevated platforms rose like jagged spires filled with nobles whose eyes flickered with ambition and suspicion. At the far end, the ancient throne waited, its surface etched with the history of countless rulers, some fallen, some immortalized. Riley's gaze flicked to the king, lying pale and frail upon his bier nearby, eyes closed but lips tight with unspoken warnings. The coronation was both a tribute and a turning point, a ritual meant to solidify the transition of power, yet fraught with peril. Lord Caelan approached, his expression grave yet composed. "The council is restless," he murmured. "The prince's faction grows bolder," Riley nodded, "and so must we be." As the ceremony began, a chorus of voices rose in solemn chant, echoing off the metallic walls. The prince stepped forward, tony, his gaze cold and calculating, his cloak trailing behind him like a shadow of death. His every movement was measured, his smile a blade hidden beneath polished veneer. Riley's pulse quickened. She had anticipated this moment, prepared for every contingency, except the chill that crept up her spine when their eyes met, briefly locking in a silent duel of wills. Then subtle chaos unfurled. From the crowd, a sudden scream shattered the ceremony's fragile peace. Noble guards surged forward as a cloaked figure darted through the aisles, a vial glinting in their hand, poison meant for the crown. Riley reacted instantly, her voice sharp as a blade. "Guards, seize them!" The hall erupted into confusion, nobles scrambling as the assailant was tackled. The vial shattered on the floor, releasing a faint but deadly mist. In the midst of the turmoil, Lord Renar appeared, his face an impassive mask. "Chaos suits you, Advisor Arden," he sneered, stepping toward the prince. "The throne is ripe for the taking." Riley's mind raced. This was the gambit, the silent war erupting into open battle. With a swift command, Varen and loyal guards formed a protective ring around her. "Stay close," he urged. The prince's eyes flicked to Riley once more, a dark promise lingering between them. This is far from over. As the ceremony collapsed into a maelstrom of betrayal and violence, Riley realized that survival meant more than cunning. It demanded sacrifice. The coronation had become a battlefield, and the throne's true master was yet to be revealed. The aftermath of the failed assassination attempt rippled through the palace like a shockwave, shattering any remnants of calm that had clung to Caelis's ancient halls. The Grand Hall, once a place of solemn ceremony, was now scarred with overturned seats and shattered crystalline panels. Murmurs of fear and suspicion echoed in every corner, the air thick with distrust. Riley stood amidst the wreckage, her pale face illuminated by the flickering light of emergency sconces. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the gathered nobles, some trembling with fear, others steeling themselves behind practiced masks. The threat was no longer hidden. It pulsed openly in the veins of the court. Lord Caelan approached, his expression a complex web of concern and calculation. "This attack was meant to break us," he said quietly, "but instead it has fractured the palace." Riley nodded, voice low but resolute. "And it has revealed the true depth of Renar's conspiracy. His reach extends further than we imagined, into the very heart of the King's Council." As whispers grew louder, Riley knew the time for subtlety was over. The fragile alliances that had held together the kingdom were splintering, each faction retreating into their own shadows. In the council chamber, Riley convened an emergency meeting. The walls, lined with ancient relics and holomaps, seemed to close in as she addressed the room. "We stand on the edge of collapse," she began, her voice cutting through the tension. "Renar's betrayal is not just an act of treason, it is an invitation to chaos. If we do not act decisively, the throne will fall into ruin." Voices rose in protest and fear, but Riley silenced them with a raised hand. "We will root out the conspirators, expose their allies, and restore order. But to do this, we need unwavering loyalty." A younger noble stepped forward, eyes wide with urgency. "And what of the prince? His claim grows stronger with every day the king remains incapacitated." Riley's gaze hardened. "Tony's ambitions are clear, but he is a pawn in a larger game. We must focus on the shadows that manipulate him." As the meeting dispersed, Riley retreated to her chambers, the weight of betrayal pressing heavily on her shoulders. Alone she reviewed intercepted messages and gathered intelligence. Each revelation a dagger twisting deeper. Her thoughts were interrupted by a quiet knock. Varen entered, his expression grave. "There is something you need to see." He handed her a data crystal, its surface glowing faintly. Riley activated it, revealing a holographic recording, an intimate conversation between Lord Renar and an unknown figure cloaked in darkness. The words were chilling. Plans for a final coup, timed to the king's demise. The realization struck like lightning. The palace was not just a battlefield, it was a crucible, and the flames were rising. Riley clenched her fists. "We have little time." The echoes of betrayal are growing louder, and soon they will drown out all reason. Outside, the city of Caelis slumbered unaware, but within its walls, the true war had already begun. The corridors of the palace were colder now, not from the chill of stone and metal, but from the weight of unspoken truths and concealed treacheries. Every step Riley took echoed like a warning, every whisper a potential dagger aimed at her. We're back," In the heart of Caelis, trust had become the rarest currency. Riley sat alone in her private chamber, the flickering light from the holoscreen casting shifting patterns across her pale face. The recording from Varen played on loop, a stark reminder that the enemy was not just at the gates, but embedded deep within their own walls. Her fingers traced the edge of a worn medallion, a relic from her mother, a symbol of hope amidst the encroaching darkness. She pressed it tightly, grounding herself in the fragile certainty it offered. A soft knock broke her concentration. Varen entered, his expression grim but resolute. "We've uncovered another layer," he said. "There's a faction within Renar's network, closer to you than you realize." Riley's breath caught. "Who?" He hesitated, then spoke the name like a curse. "Your most trusted aide, Leora." The room seemed to tilt. Leora, the confidant who had whispered counsel through countless nights, who had stood by Riley's side through every peril. The revelation was a betrayal too sharp to swallow. "Why?" Riley demanded, voice barely steady. Varen shook his head. "We don't know her motives yet, but her access makes her dangerous. She's been feeding Renar information, details that compromised every plan we set in motion." Riley's mind raced through memories. The late night, strategy sessions, the shared secrets, the laughter that now felt hollow. "I need proof," she said finally, steeling herself, "and I need to confront her before she disappears." Together they devised a plan, a delicate trap woven from shadows and half-truths. Riley would summon Leora under the pretense of urgent counsel, while Varen and loyal guards awaited in the hidden passages. The confrontation was inevitable. When Leora arrived, her face was unreadable, a mask perfected through years of deception. Riley met her gaze squarely. "Why betray me?" she asked softly. Leora's eyes flickered with conflicted fire. "Because some truths are too dangerous to reveal, and some alliances must be preserved, no matter the cost." The words hung between them like a storm ready to break. Before Riley could respond, the doors burst open. Varen's voice echoed sharply, "You are under arrest for treason against the crown." But Leora was swift, her hands moving like a shadow's whisper. In the chaos, a hidden blade gleamed, and the room exploded into a battle of wills and steel. As the struggle unfolded, Riley realized that in the palace of shadows, the deepest darkness often lay not in the enemy without, but the enemy within. The palace was no longer just a fortress. It was a crucible where loyalties were tested and shattered beneath the unforgiving heat of ambition and fear. After the violent confrontation with Leora, the threads holding Caelis together trembled. Dangerously close to breaking, Riley sat alone in the dim glow of her chambers, the weight of betrayal pressing on her like a physical burden. The room was silent, save for the steady hum of the city beyond the thick walls, a city unaware of the war tearing its heart apart. Her mind replayed the events of the past days, Leora's duplicity, the failed assassination, Renar's relentless scheming. Every revelation deepened the fractures within the court, and Riley knew the prince's faction was poised to exploit the chaos. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Varen entered, his usually steady eyes shadowed with doubt. "The council is divided," he reported quietly. "Some nobles blame you for the unrest. They whisper that your grip on power is slipping." Riley's gaze hardened. "Then we will show them strength." She summoned a meeting of her closest allies, a gathering held in secrecy beneath the palace's grand chambers. Faces flickered in the low light, trusted generals, loyal nobles, those willing to stake their lives on her vision. "We face not just enemies outside, but betrayal within," Riley began, voice unwavering. "Renar's network has poisoned the court, and the prince grows bolder by the day." One noblewoman, her silver hair catching the candlelight, spoke with a bitter edge. "If the king falls, what hope do we have? The people demand stability, Not endless intrigue. Riley met her gaze. Stability built on fear is no stability at all. We must unite or be consumed. Plans were laid with precision, strategies to root out remaining conspirators, alliances to be forged or broken, and contingencies for the inevitable confrontation with the prince. Yet beneath the surface, suspicion lingered. Whispers of dissent circled like vultures, and Riley could feel eyes watching her every move, waiting for a misstep. That night, as the palace settled into uneasy silence, Riley stood at her window, looking out over Caelis. The city's lights twinkled like distant stars, indifferent to the human struggles below. In the reflection of the glass, she saw not just her own determined face, but the shadows that clung to her, the weight of fractured alliances, and the price of power. The battle for Caelis was far from over. And in the Game of Thrones, trust was the most dangerous gamble of all. The palace breathed with a restless energy, corridors alive with hurried footsteps and hushed conversations. Yet beneath the surface, a heavier current swirled, a veil of deception woven so finely that even the most vigilant could find themselves ensnared. Riley navigated the labyrinthine passages with measured steps, her senses sharpened by the knowledge that every glance might conceal a dagger, every smile mask a lie. The stakes had never been higher. The fate of Caelis balanced precariously on the edge of a blade. Her destination was a secluded chamber known only to a select few, a place where secrets could be exchanged away from prying eyes. Inside, a holographic map of the city flickered, nodes pulsing with data from hidden informants and intercepted transmissions. Varen awaited her arrival, his face etched with concern. "The prince's faction is moving swiftly," he said. "They've secured new alliances within the outer districts. If we don't act soon, the city could fall before we're ready." Riley's eyes narrowed. "And what of our own allies? Can we trust them?" Varen shook his head slowly. "Some loyalties are shadows, shifting with the light. Even those closest to us might harbor secrets." Riley's mind raced, piecing together fragments of intelligence, subtle shifts in council votes, unexplained, absences, rumors that drifted through the palace like ghosts. The line between friend and foe blurred until it was almost invisible. Suddenly, a soft chime echoed through the chamber, an encrypted message arriving on her wrist console. Riley activated it cautiously. The sender was unknown, the content chilling, a warning that her next move would be watched, and that betrayal was closer than ever. A cold determination settled over her. "We must turn the veil of deception against them," she declared. "If they cloak themselves in lies, then we will unravel their masks." Over the next days, Riley orchestrated a web of counterintelligence, false orders, secret meetings, and carefully planted rumors designed to mislead and expose. Each act was a calculated risk, a step into the shadows where one wrong move meant oblivion. One night, as she reviewed the latest reports, Varen approached quietly. "We have confirmation," he whispered. "There is a mole within the inner circle, feeding the prince's faction detailed plans of our defenses." Riley's heart tightened. "Then the game is far from over, but now we hold the power to end it." Outside, the city of Caelis simmered, under twin moons, unaware of the silent war waging in its shadows, a war where every secret could be a weapon and every truth a trap. The veil of deception was thick, but Riley Arden was ready to tear it apart. The air in the palace was taut like the stretched string of a bow ready to release its arrow. Every breath Riley took was measured, every word weighed against the chaos that threatened to unravel Caelis from within. The final pieces were moving into place, the moment of reckoning approaching like a storm over the horizon. In the dim light of the war room, holographic maps hovered between allies, their blue glows casting sharp shadows on determined faces. The plan was precise: expose the traitor, neutralize the prince's faction, and secure the throne before the city plunged into civil war. Riley stood at the center, her eyes scanning the data streams, her mind alive with possibilities and risks. She was no longer merely a player in the game. She was the architect of its outcome. Varen approached, his voice low but urgent. "The mole's identity is confirmed. It's someone we least expected, Counselor Davrin." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Davrin, a man known for his loyalty and counsel, now revealed as the serpent in their midst. Riley's lips tightened. Then the final gambit begins. As night fell, the palace transformed into a battleground of shadows and whispers. Loyal guards took positions along secret corridors, while Riley prepared to confront the conspirators in a decisive confrontation. Her heart thundered as she approached the grand hall, now emptied of frivolity and adorned with the cold gleam of steel and anticipation. The prince stood waiting, Tony, his expression a mask of defiance and desperation. "You underestimated me, Riley," he said, voice laced with both anger and respect. "This throne was never meant to be shared." She met his gaze unflinchingly. "Power taken by betrayal is never secure." Suddenly from the shadows emerged Counselor Davrin, flanked by armed supporters, his treachery laid bare. A tense silence fell before chaos erupted. Blades flashed, voices shouted commands, and the clash of steel echoed through the marble chambers. Riley moved with lethal grace, every strike calculated, every breath a battle cry. Varen fought beside her, their bond forged in fire and trust. As the fight wove through the corridors, allies were lost and enemies unmasked. In the heart of the storm, Riley faced the prince once more, a final duel of wills and blades. The clash was fierce and unyielding, shadows dancing as metal met metal. But when the dust settled, it was Riley who stood victorious, her resolve unbroken, her vision of Caelis preserved. Breathing heavily, she looked around at the aftermath, the fractured alliances, the cost of survival. The palace was scarred, but its soul remained. "This is only the beginning," she whispered, knowing that the true work of rebuilding lay ahead. The final gambit had been played and won. The first light of dawn crept through the towering crystalline windows of the palace, casting fractured rainbows across the marble floors, a fragile promise of hope after a long, harrowing night. Outside, the city of Caelis stirred, unaware of the silent battle that had raged within its heart and the new dawn that was about to rise. Riley stood alone in the grand hall, the weight of the crown resting lightly in her hands. The throne, once a symbol of fractured power and whispered conspiracies, now awaited its rightful sovereign. Her pale face, framed by dark strands escaping from her battle-worn hair, was resolute, a beacon of strength tempered by sacrifice. The echoes of the previous night's turmoil still lingered, the broken weapons, the scattered banners, the faint scent of smoke and blood. Yet amidst the ruin, there was an undeniable quiet triumph. The court, bruised but unbroken, looked to her not just as a leader, but as the embodiment of Caelis's survival. Counselors, generals, and nobles gathered, their faces a mixture of awe, relief, and tentative respect. Varen stood beside her, a steady presence and the silent guardian through every storm. Riley raised the crown, its intricate filigree catching the morning light, reflecting the countless stories etched into its metal. With a voice both firm and compassionate, she spoke. "Today marks not only the beginning of my reign, but the rebirth of Caelis. We have been tested by shadows and betrayal, but we endured. Together, we will build a future where trust is our foundation and hope our guide." The chamber erupted into muted applause, reserved but sincere. For the first time in many cycles, the kingdom dared to dream of peace. Yet Riley knew that the scars of treachery would not fade overnight. The ghosts of past conspiracies would linger, and the fragile alliances would need careful tending. But she was ready, hardened by fire, sharpened by loss, and inspired by the resilience of her people. Later, as she retreated to her private quarters, Riley allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. She touched the medallion from her mother, feeling its steady warmth, a reminder that even in darkness, light could be found. Outside, Caelis basked in the twin suns' gentle embrace. A city reborn, and at its center, a queen rose, not merely to rule, but to heal, to unite, and to lead with unwavering resolve. The dawn of the new sovereign had arrived,